There are a lot of seller concessions out there, absolutely. And I would have to say, though, that I think that this can actually be an opportune time to buy in some of these places where there's a lot of inventory, where you have sellers offering a lot of concessions, because what happens is that finally sellers are willing to meet buyers in the middle. They're willing to negotiate. And as a buyer, you haven't had this type of power. If you're in one of these markets where inventory levels have really picked up, you haven't had this type of power in a very long
So let's
time.
talk about it. And we're going to talk about what my people call the promised land. We're going to talk about Florida. And we have a Zillow map that we pulled up. And what we did is the executive producer and the owner of Launch Live actually taught me that you can put in keywords for Zillow searches and use the word motivated. There are 8,900 motivated sellers in Florida. What does motivated mean when a realtor puts that term into a listing? And by the way, that 8,900 is kind of high. We're going to hit some other popular states too, but that's a high number.
So I have heard motivated so much lately. I've definitely heard it more recently than I've heard it before. Let's just say that. But typically when you hear that a seller is motivated, it means that they're willing to meet a buyer in the middle there. So they might have their house listed at a certain price. It doesn't mean they're going to sell it at that price. It means they want to get a conversation started. They want offers. They want to start negotiating. And it really means too that they're up to any offer. So I think in past markets, when there was such a lack of inventory, you almost were afraid to offer anything that was below asking price because you might offend the seller. And now when you hear motivated, that means, all right, give me what you got. Let's see if we can meet and come up with a deal and get this home sold.
I like to point out that there are hot spots in Florida, for instance, Dade County. But even in Dade County, I've been watching condo prices in my mom's building. And she's in Coral Gables, which is very expensive now. When I was a kid, it wasn't. But then when I was a kid, we didn't have electricity. Edison was just inventing it. But here's the deal. Home prices for existing homes still rose in May nationwide. 422,800 was, I believe, I don't know if that's the average or if that was the mean, but I just wanted to ask you, are you seeing prices come down, and if they are coming down, maybe not sufficiently because they're at highs that a lot of us have just never seen?
You're so right on. So it's so market specific because there's so many markets that just have this uptick in inventory, these Sunbelt states, Mountain West states. So you are seeing downward pressure on prices. You have seen a drop in some of these metros that are located in these areas, but overall, our prices are still up. We're appreciating at about a 1.3% pace of appreciation. The positive thing is that this is a much more modest pace of appreciation that we're seeing. So last year around this time, we were at about a 6% pace of appreciation. So now it's down to that 1.3%. There's still appreciation, but we need to see this more modest, this more sustainable pace of appreciation.
Okay, can I rephrase this for you? I was just doing with our last guest. Let me repeat what you just said. I'm going to use a conversation I had with my doctor who wants me to lose 20 pounds. If I were to say to my doctor, well, look, my pace of weight increase has slowed down and I'm not increasing my appreciation as much as I used to, I think my doctor would say, no, you need to decrease. Do we need housing prices to decrease to get this housing market back on fire?
This housing market is stuck. We're on the third consecutive year now of really sluggish home sales. Prices got so high, they got so out of whack with income levels. So yes, we do need to see more sustainable prices. We need to see a more sustainable pace of appreciation. We do need to see prices come down because these wages haven't been able to keep up. We also need to see lower mortgage rates. We're in a really challenging housing market, and this was supposed to be the year we were going to get out of this sluggish housing market. And instead, people just continued to be hit with so many affordability constraints like these higher home prices.
I have to apologize to a buddy of mine, Robert Keston, who wanted us to ask a question of the last guest about Medicare. Robert, if you're watching, I know you're where you are, so you could ask questions about housing prices in Florida. Jenna, you're in Key West. I remember as a kid, well, not so much a kid because we skipped school and we would drive down to the Keys. But I guess I just ratted myself out. But it was run down. But it was run down in a good way. It was, the Jimmy Buffett Keys. And then it went it's crazy ever since the cruise ships started docking there. Are you seeing price appreciation slow down in that market, or is it still crazy?
We still have high prices, but we're seeing a lot of motivated sellers. I'll bring up that word again. There's the activity has really slowed. I would say that what's happened in this housing market is that buyer psychology has just really shifted. I think because the housing market is under so much pressure, you also throw in uncertainty to the mix, the economic uncertainty, the geopolitical uncertainty. And what's happened is buyers are much more hesitant, they're more cautious, and they're really taking their time. So we have the demand down here, but we just have buyers that are just really dragging their feet before they make a big move.
Let me ask you this, because I want to pull up, we've got the Zillow map up for Florida, but I believe we also put in motivated for the state of Texas. I'm looking at the off-ramps for my fellow New Yorkers. By the way, I'm not leaving. I love this city too much. Look, what it took me to get here, I had to quit a great job in Cleveland, Ohio, and I love Cleveland, but I'm staying in New York. Megyn Kelly tweeted, "Thank God we left New York." And I wanted to say to Megyn, cowards run away. People who love something and want to believe in it either find a way to make it work or fight. That's my Megyn Kelly rant. There's Texas. So Texas, they're motivated in Texas because that's one of the places the New Yorkers are going to go. They're going to go to San Antonio. And by the way, when all these liberal New Yorkers with money start winding up in Florida and in Texas, boy, let's see that welcome mat get pulled out. But again,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I said we'll have a shift again.
We might. But I am curious if interest rates were to come down. There is an expectation that we would see the Fed cut interest rates. Would that necessarily, do you think, lead to a drop in mortgage rates and the machinations behind the 10-year and how this all gets worked out? At the end of the day, the banks have to figure out what their spread is and will they drop them. Would that ignite the market or would that just inflate prices?
It could be both. It's so hard to tell, and I really don't expect mortgage rates to drop much this year. And I think that a lot of people had come to terms with the fact, too, that mortgage rates are probably going to be staying around this level at least until 2026. So I think that it's good that people are starting to come to this reality that rates aren't going to be dropping down to the lows that we had seen a few years ago, and they're coming to terms with this new reality of having rates around this level. But lower rates would definitely help get the market moving. We just still need other factors also playing with those lower rates to get real movement in the housing market.
Do you I don't know what the ratio would be in your part of the world, but I know that there is a formula that people should consider, the rent to owning ratio, to determine whether it's better to buy or rent. And are we at that point nationwide where it just is better? I personally think it's always better to own because you control, even if you have a mortgage, if it's fixed, you know what your outlay is every month till it's paid off. Do you think we've hit that point nationwide where it might be better financially for people to rent than to own?
I think for some people, it is better for them to rent than own. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. I know that there was just a report that just came out today that was saying that in about 47 of the 50 most populous metros, you're having to use over 30%. So you're having to pay 30% of your monthly income over that for your mortgage payments. And you're not supposed to be doing that. You should be paying around 25, 30%. In some cases, people are having to pay 50, 60%. So I don't think for everyone it makes sense to own. I'm with you, though. I'm obviously a big proponent of home ownership. I believe in home ownership, but for some people, it just financially does not make sense.
Your experience, and I realize you deal with a different, perhaps, clientele. Key West is not the Key West of my youth. It's an expensive place. And the clients who are coming in, are they the kind of people who are cash buyers or are they also doing mortgages? And what is it like when you have to have that discussion with certain buyers about either you need to set your sights a little bit lower or they aren't realistic?
So we have a lot of cash buyers in the Keys. I would say sometimes you can see our sales, 50% of the
Wow.
sales are cash buyers. So we definitely have a lot of cash buyers. We also, though, of course, have people who are taking out mortgages. And it's interesting because a lot of people think that homes would be much lower than they are in the Keys. I was just having a conversation with someone who told me he's ready to buy an investment property down here, and his range was around 300,000. That's pretty non-existent in Key
Yeah, he needs to
West.
go up to
So
Cape Coral.
yeah, he's got to go to another part of Florida. But yeah, you have to explain to people, you have to explain obviously the median price of homes down here. And look, we are dealing with the same dynamics as other parts of Florida, but these prices are still high in the Keys. They're still holding
I
up.
want to ask you, when we first met and I talked to you about this very issue, I think it was back in March. What is it like as a real estate agent, as someone in your profession? Because you're making a market, you're bringing buyers and sellers together when you get those deals done. Describe for me the excitement of that for you.
Oh, it's an amazing feeling when you have the transaction that's closed. I think also for me, since I live down here in the Keys, so there's so many people that have like left their corporate lives and they've always dreamt of living on an island. So this has like been a dream for them. So not only am I getting to help them like purchase this home, but I'm helping them get to see like their dream come true, and it's an awesome
My,
feeling.
my neighbors in Cleveland live in Key West
Mhm.
half of the year. And they
Okay.
bought, it was a townhouse. It's not on the actual island of Key West, it's the island right next to it, but it's all Key West apparently. Beautiful kind of townhouse. And fortunately, it was built. It's not on the. It's high up. There's nothing under it, but high up because when it does rain, sometimes it floods a bit. But it is beautiful. It's stunning, and I know what they paid for it, and I know what they could get for it now. And I'm like, damn. Uh, but these cash buyers today, any investor, whether it's real estate, whether it's stock, whatever, you want to get your money back. I suspect you'll get your money back, but will your investment grow? Because what we talked about earlier is that the price appreciation is 1, maybe 2%. Doesn't sound, and if you're buying your dream, that's a different thing. But it doesn't sound
Right.
like, as an investment, just in that regard, it might be the best move for some people.
Well, and I think that that's why investors have really been pulling back. We're not seeing as many investors enter the market right now because for them, it doesn't make as much sense because they want to hold on to it for a very short amount of time, and they might not be making their money back. So I would say we've really seen a pullback in investor activity in a lot of spots of the country.
And average listing, I'm just curious, I realize you're in a hot market. Days on
Mhm.
market, what is it in Key West?
I think we're at about our average is around 60 days on the
Oh, that
market.
surprises me. That's kind of normal, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yes, we are pretty normal in terms of our average days on market. It does change, but I would say it's hovering around that 60 days on market.
All right. Before I close up with you, is there anything you want to add about where you see? We've already talked about 2025 is probably still in play, but 2026, do you have any projections? Because you've been spot on.
Well, my what I really predict will happen. First of all, this housing market has really defied expectations. So whenever you think something's going to happen in this housing market, it always does the opposite. But I do predict that we will start seeing more of a correction. We'll see an adjustment in the housing market. I think that this will continue throughout this year, and I think that what could be happening in some Sunbelt states, some Mountain West states, we could start seeing this happening in some states in the Northeast, the Midwest. Those areas are doing really well right now because they have such a lack of inventory. But we could start seeing some of what's happening down here start to happen up there in 2026.